Tennessee, David Tulis.
Sometimes I come into the studio and I don't know exactly what the first point is. And I like not to have shop talk at the beginning, and I like not to say who I am or what show this is or give an agenda of what the program will cover today. I think all that's just tedious. I should do what I normally do today, and that is just to get right into the question. I spent part of the morning, probably too much of it, looking at an appellate court case that I thought was somehow deep sixed, but it wasn't deep sixed after all. It was simply a case that was published in 2000 that did not make the digital transition. So it's not available online, and it was not available through the Supreme Court or the appellate court website. And so finally I said, okay, why is this case not available? What was the case? What was the thinking of the middle court judges on Chattanooga, city of Chattanooga versus Davis? And I've been thinking about this case a long time. I've read it, I've reread it, I've marked up my copy of it, and carefully discussed it with people and thought about it. And also a companion case that came earlier than that one. The high court case was September 4, 2001, and the appellate court, the mid-level court of appeals, was 2000. And I'm in August 9, and I have the filed copy. It was simply not translated over into the digital world, and so I had to ask for a hard copy, paying $1 a page, or Mrs. Newsom, the sweetheart at the Knoxville court, said, well, let me just scan it and email it to you. And I said, well, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Thank you. And so I got it in the email, and I just read it this morning. It came a couple days ago. And I just now trying to absorb this opinion and the things in it that are corrected by the higher court. The question is municipal authority. And it's an important question because we have enforcement by Donna Williams right now of the ban on Airbnb, the intergalactic local home sharing, house sharing, apartment sharing system that is being regulated by Mayor Andy Burke and his Office of Economic Development. Of course, the Office of Economic Development should be about encouraging and enhancing and liberating the market so that people will come here and do business here. But no, this one is about preventing business, preventing relationships, and barring transactions online. We are the gig city, but we have a Beijing wall around us. So there's a question there in the ordinance on short-term vacation rentals and the unconstitutional and illegal district created that allows, if you're within it, Airbnb relationships, renting your extra rooms or your house out when you're not there or by some arrangement. And then those others outside that district, which are disallowed, forbidden, and banned and barred from involving themselves in the free market in the rental of their private houses. Right? This is really this should make your blood boil to think about the idea that the city council would do that with only one dissent, and that was Demetrius Coonrod. And her reasons for voting against it were not mine. I don't think she really understood my arguments against it, but nonetheless, she did rightly vote against it. And so the city is waiting for this renewal period that's a few months out still, in which that map will be reconsidered. But anyway, the question is of municipal authority. And I mentioned that the Airbnb ordinance because it imposes allegedly, and Wade Hinton thinks he can get away with it, allegedly a fine every day that a non-compliant Airbnb host or hostess has a house or a property available on these networks. And Donna Williams at the Economic Development Office has engaged in a sniffer ally in the corporate world to sniff out all those who are daring to advertise their homes available through the internet for rental, short-term vacation rentals in Chattanooga. And so the ordinance says for each day of the offense, it's a new offense. Well, as I point out, there are doctrines that forbid that from taking place, and Wade Hinton should know better. And the doctrine is res judicata, which means that once decided, it can't be relitigated. And so that means that if a person is found by the city court guilty of having a house on the market, then the next day there's a $50 fine, and the next day there has to be a new case that is decided for that one. So in other words, for every day that there is an offense, there has to be a new case. You can't have one case deciding a whole status of day, a whole group of days for which there is a purported offense, right? And so for him to say, well, for each day that you're a scofflaw, there's another $50 fine. Of course, if that were the case, it would be prohibitive to do, and no one would challenge it. And there has been no report yet of anyone daring to challenge the city authority and its ordinance. But res judicata would not allow that to happen. And there's another. It's under the doctrine of estoppel. Estoppel prevents you from doing something, right? If you have estoppel, that's a doctrine to relieve, you might say, the state of over litigation in court. It's a docket clearing, a docket clogging prevention doctrine, you could say. Try to say that fast 5 times. Well, this is David Tulis, and we're here at Nooga Radio 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. We are we're on high definition radio, and I do want you to take advantage of that. It's on your radio. It hasn't been marketed well, I think, but it is a powerful and very, very clear signal, better than regular FM. It's 95.3, but it's not the regular 95.3. This is the real one, the one that matters on HD4, HD high definition. Do find that. Do me a favor. Chattanooga is already way ahead of other cities in the use of digital high definition. So do turn to that. Chattanooga versus Davis in the mid-level decision has important things to say, even though when you consider that the issues there, it's almost bad advice to look at the appellate case, because it's just kind of dictated. In other words, the things that are decided right and wrong, things that are overturned there are then overturned again on appeal. So really, the mid-level case is not crucial in one's consideration of a matter. But because I've been thinking long and hard about this question of municipal authority, and really trying to get down to this question of policing, that the whole organization of policing is something that really intrigues me. What is the legal basis for it? And I'm thinking, well, my thinking in pencil is that City of Chattanooga versus Kevin Davis that Jerry Summers put on. Jerry Summers is a noted writer. He's a historian. Sometimes you see his columns of noted figures in the Sunday Chattanooga Time-Free Press. Of course, get the print edition if you want to have a copy of what he has to say. And, one that gets yellow over time, right? You can keep it in your notebook. And he brought this case, and yet he sort of disbelieves it. Is my understanding, my take on this is that he sort of disbelieves his own case. And when I entertain the analysis of Basil Marceau, the perennial candidate for governor and other high offices, and as I consider what he has to say about it, because it's Basil Marceau that has brought this issue up. He's not a Johnny One Note. He has several notes that you might say he plays, and this is one of them. And the analysis that he tried to get me to understand. I mean, I'm a very slow person, so he tried to help me to understand what this decision says and what it means. And so he and I've interviewed him, I don't know, about 6 or 7 times about this case. I've asked him, well, Basil, you're saying this about it. You're saying that it does not allow for policing per se, and that it makes policing effectively nothing more powerful, nothing more military than process servers, and that's it. And enforcers potentially of traffic statutes that are adopted by the city by permission, right? The legislature lets the cities in the state adopt the traffic part of the traffic rules out of Title 55. That's the Transportation Code 54 and 55 in the same volume. And so therefore that you can make effectively a statute, an ordinance, and enforce it yourself, because you can't ordinarily enforce the statutes. And yet we have police departments all across the state of Tennessee that are enforcing the entire body of statute. In other words, police departments are investigating murders, rapes, robberies, shootings, gang violence, and all on the presumption of jurisdiction and authority. And that's just what I'm asking about. And I'm asking, how is this possible that there could be a decision? Here's my question: if it's you say that these two decisions, Chattanooga versus Davis, and then the early one, Chattanooga versus Myers, they recognize the fining authority of cities, but not the punitive authority. Cities do not have punitive capacity. They are simply domestic, not domestic, but they are municipal organizations, and they provide services. They provide police services, they provide sewer services, and other water services, and by contract, and other services to people like you, my listener here at Nooga Radio. And how is it that they can do more, and how is it that they can serve the public by enforcing the laws? Well, and why do we need them when we have Sheriff Jim Hammond? Right, we have Sheriff Jim Hammond, who is his main charge is defending of the court. In fact, he reflects the older biblical order in the American legal landscape, and that would be from the Hebrew Republic, right? What we adopted from the Confederation of the Children of Israel, and that is that government is mostly the court. There is no executive branch, there is no legislative branch, because we have God's law, and we have the common law, and we have the military man in your county defends the judges. He defends the judges and enforces their orders. There is no law except common law, God's law, and then orders from the court. That order is enforced by the sheriff, right? We have sheriffs. We have Jim Hammond, who's seeking re-election. And why do we need cities? Why do we need city police departments? That is the question. And so the question I've asked my interlocutors on this point, in these sort of heady legal discussions, and when you're having a heady legal discussion with Basil Marceau, it's often hard going because he has now two teeth, and of course he was the laughing stock back when he ran for governor in the Republican primary, and he was on YouTube, and of course he enjoys the fame, the sort of now faded fame that he had online with his interviews and his slurring manner of speech. But it's not because he's not drunk or anything like that. He just has missing teeth. He's a businessman living in Saudi Daisy, in fact, not far from me. And he's probably Saudi Daisy's most notable resident. and so when we have these legal discussions, and if he is my interlocutor, the person with whom I'm speaking, right, and to put it in Saudi Daisy speak, then it's kind of hard going. Legally, perhaps as well as just an oral conversation. What does this mean? What is this about? And the question I have to him is this: well, if what you're saying is right, how can it be? How is it possible that we have this major case that Jerry Summers brought on behalf of Kevin Davis? I'm not sure what kind of fortune Kevin Davis had to spend to get it, but Larry Summers saw a great case. He knew it was a great case, and I'm sure he was willing to give Kevin Davis a break because he was able to make the case in a very astute way. Jerry Summers, here in Chattanooga, senior lawyer, high noted attorney in Chattanooga, and he brought all the right issues up. He brought up all the right issues, and the court was willing to hear them fresh. And the high court, when the appeal was made, I think as of right to the high court, he was able to make all the case, make his arguments again there, kind of make them fresh there. And how is it if his case brought the decision down as Basil Marceau suggests, and as I think Basil Marceau is a very smart man. He's a very, very smart man. If he's right on this, then how is it that the entire establishment of the state ignores it? How can it be that you have the high court saying cities are civil and they have the power to fine, which is discussed over pages and pages? What is a fine? And how is it not punitive, but rather restorative? A fine is something in the way of liquidated damages. That's essentially what it is. It pays for the enforcement of the ordinance, right? A fine is a way of paying for the administration of city government. It's not punitive. It can't be punitive. And at the bottom of this limitation, just by the way, is I think it's Article 6, Section 14, which is the Tennessee Constitution's $50 fine rule. It's a rule that's based on silver money, and there's a $50 fine rule, and it says essentially that you cannot there cannot be any fine past $50 unless there's a jury, right? And juries are in criminal cases and in civil cases up to past a certain dollar amount. That ordinance is the chokehold, you might say, on city governments expanding their lungs and billowing out their chests to become mighty enforcers of law. That's how I see it. That provision in the Constitution prevents cities from engaging in enforcement of statute. That's what City of Chattanooga versus Davis says, and that's what Jim Hammond, the sheriff, says. In the day he announced his reelection, he was giving me a little private chat right between you and me, right? You and I got together, and he was here to chat with you about his running for office, and he said that the county enforces statute and the city enforces ordinances, and that's I take that as important legal advice. I need to perhaps pick Jim Hammond's brain about it more, but and he's part two of that question was, well, do you let David Roddy, now the chief of police, do you let him and Mayor Andy Burke, who's the chief executive of the city government, do you let them enforce statute because they have legal authority to do it, or because you're granting them professional courtesy? Are they doing it out of your professional courtesy to them, or is it under statute? Now, I don't think I asked the question quite that intelligently, and so I really have to go back and check. But his answer was, well, it's courtesy. They enforce the statute out of my courtesy, out of my leave. Right? I give them my leave, one professional to another. So again, there's a question there as to whether that authority is a real authority. And you say, David, come on, David Tulis, get off of it. Come on, get on with the news, right? We need to talk about Helen Burns Sharp. We need to talk about the city council meeting yesterday, and we need to hear about the stormwater regulations. Okay, well, I'm going to get to that. And David, we need to talk about Diane Black's come on in the mail that came yesterday. Diane Black running for governor as a Republican. One more person running for governor. And what does this person say about how she's a strong conservative? Well, I wish there were conservatives. I think there are not very many of them. I want you to know I'm not a conservative. I'm not a conservative. I just don't have the fantasy to believe some of the left-wing ideas that conservatives now defend, right? Things that were once radical left-wing proposals are defended by conservatives. Immigration controls, that's a left-wing proposal that was pushed by Cesar Chavez 50 years ago. He would kill migrants who came in, right? He was a union man, and he would kill migrants who came in who didn't have the proper paper. He was big time on border control as a left-wing union, pro labor advocate. And then there are not many others that the Republicans and the conservatives now defend. They're now the conservative wing, right? you have all kinds of socialism, all kinds of restraints against free trade, restraints against innocent, private, non-criminal people, and the Republicans defend all those restraints, whether it's gun control or regulation of traffic. And my time is so short; it is so short. But here's, am I leaving you in the lurch on this point about Chattanooga versus Davis? I'm not going to solve it today. I just can't. I can't solve it right now. But we're going to look at some valuable things, I hope, today on the program. This is David Tulis, and you're here at 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM. I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. And it seems like in the past couple months that my program has just gotten to be more on things about government. I think there's a problem there. I don't want to keep talking about government and the problems of the civil authorities and so on, how they're going past their bounds. But just to finish, but I am, and that's because I think we need to somehow resist. There is a negative action that you and I need to take, and that is resisting them. And with one hand, and then we look at them briefly, push our hand, push them back, and then we turn and look ahead with the right hand, you might say. And that's the area of our service, right? The area of the market that we serve. That is our family, our wives, our children, whether they're getting a solid, maybe a Christian education or something that's non-progressive education, our business, our customers, looking out for our parents, right? These are the kinds of things that that are the positive labor of the family man, like you, my listener. And but at the same time, we have to fight with our left hand kind of behind us. We have to, get thee hence Satan kind of motion, like the Lord gave to Peter when he tried to tempt the Lord there near the end. And but to finish on the point about Chattanooga versus Davis, and the point's just about to escape my mind, so I better utter it before it passes out of view. And I think it already has. But no, okay, here it is. Here's the question I was trying to get to, mentioning Basil Marceau. I said, Basil Marceau, you can't possibly be right. How can the whole legal establishment, how can all the judges, how can city councils and courts all go as if Chattanooga versus Davis didn't say what seems to be the point, and that is that cities are civil. And then, but I answer the question this way. Well, look at what other things can we point to that indicate that government often will simply ignore what is adverse to its interest, that will ignore what is its modus operandi, right? That just seems that would set aside some important part of commercial government, right? Where government is chief capitalist, chief investor, chief planner. And I do want to mention the 2030 plan for Chattanooga, the comprehensive plan. There's a nifty introduction by Barry Bennett, the executive director of the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Agency, and I just before the show began, I just opened that file up and I said, "Wow, that's a great little discussion about a comprehensive plan, and do we need one?" And some suggestions I would like to make to you about how, if we have a comprehensive plan, we're operating against the poor. We always operate against the poor when we have any comprehensive system that raises values and raises prices of real estate and infrastructure. Those tend to be, if you have a laissez-faire market, if you have a market where individuals decide where things are built, roads, whether they're roads or parks or condos or retail buildings, if you have the private sector doing it without government subsidization or without government barricade, you're going to have a better allocation of rich and poor, and the poor will be able to live in Chattanooga again. Because right now, the way the government has involved itself in the marketplace, the poor can't come in. Right? Basil Marceau says the sheriff can't come in his understanding of this ruling. Well, if we have planning, the poor can't come in, and in fact, they're being driven out. Well, I mentioned, all right, does the government ignore vast swaths of the real world, of constitutional liberty? And the answer is yes, and it's on my pet topic, and that would be the liberty of travel. And because I've been working in the past few days in a hastening labor of mercy, I have been working on a notice, a review of the law on the liberty of travel. It's an important property right that Roger Roots, the legal historian, says has gone, right, has been just simply obliterated. And Jim McCoon, the important local attorney, says that this right has been obliterated from the 1937 Driver's License Act. I'm wondering about that. But the fact that the government operates as if a right were obliterated implies that it can imagine itself operating simply disregarding the Constitution, just as if it didn't exist. It doesn't exist. There is no such right. And sorry, we have completely inhaled all the oxygen in the room, and you may lie there on the floor dead, and we'll send someone to bury the body. We are very health conscious minded, we here in the state of Tennessee. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.